Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Stay Creative York County. Sarah here. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this message board. It is a painted wood board that I got from Michael's, and I stained the back with one color, a dark gray, painted the front with a light gray, and then got some clothespins and painted those white. So what you're going to need to be able to do this craft is a piece of wood. I got this from Michael's in the wood craft area. You are also going to need some acrylic paint. I chose just three neutral colors: white, light gray, and dark gray. You can choose any combination that you would like. I also had some detail work here on the corners and on the clothespins that I did in paint pen that can be acrylic or oil based. You're also going to need, of course, a paintbrush to be able to paint your surfaces. But for the stain, you are going to need unscented baby wipes. That is what I'm going to be using to stain the back. To store your paint, you might want a palette. I do use a palette with the baby wipe to be able to stain the wood, and of course to put my paint for the light gray surface and the white surface. I have clothespins here that I'm going to use to put my messages up. So I have three of those. To put the clothespins onto the wood board, I used a permanent glue. I believe it's E6000. You could opt for something that is like crazy glue, or you could use a hot glue gun. You just want to keep in mind how long it takes for that glue to set. So the one that I use takes 72 hours for the maximum hold, but you could do 24 hours for it. So just keep that in mind. So once we have everything painted and put on, if you want to hang this on the wall, which I opted not to do, you can find little hanging kits at Michael's or Home Depot or Lowe's where you can put the little sawtooth bracket on the back, and that will take a hammer with the sawtooth fixture. Or if you have a staple gun, you could get some twine and put the ends of the twine on the back and staple those in place. Just keep in mind how high you want it to be. So other than that, some things that I didn't use but you might want to consider is some sanding paper in case your wood surface is rough and the paint isn't going down evenly, or if it's something that might be handled a lot and you don't want it to have a rough surface. I didn't do that. I certainly could have around the edges of this piece, but I didn't opt to do that. If there's anything that I forgot, I will include it on the list on the screen. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my baby wipe ready and the color that I want to stain the wood with. I have a dark gray acrylic paint that I got from Michael's. I'm going to take a single baby wipe. You could tear it in half, which is something I do later, but I just fold it into a fourth of the size and put a small dollop of paint. And to make sure it spreads out when we're wiping with it, I'm just patting it so that it flattens out. You could also use your finger. I'm going to start by staining on the back, and I'm just going to go in up and down motions. You could also do circular, and you're just going to repeat this step. Now, when I was using the baby wipes with this wooden piece, I did not sand before using it, so it did catch and it roughed up the baby wipe a little bit. So if that's something you want to avoid, then you could sand your wood piece before you start. So I just repeated the process, adding paint to the baby wipe and putting it down, the stain down in places where I wanted to see more stain. So now that I've got a look that I like, I'm going to move from the back to the edges. It was nice having the back to practice on before moving on to the edges, which are going to be seen in the final piece. So I put a little bit of stain down onto my baby wipe and started applying it to the edges. I did have beveled edges, so I did have to make sure I got it into each of the creases. After a while, I found it a little easier to put a dollop on a palette, or you could use a plate. Then that way I could use my baby wipe by dipping it in there and then patting off the excess on another well in the palette. That made it a little easier than having to get the bottle out and apply it directly to the baby wipe over and over. I did want it to be darker on the edges than the light gray that's going to be used on the front. So I made sure I got it to a darkness that would pop with the color on the front. So now that I have the stain ready, I'm going to use my used baby wipe to just pick up that stain color off of my palette and then take the color I want to use on top, which is a light gray, and put that into my palette. I'm going to apply one coat to the front, getting my water so I can clean my paintbrush off. Now you could use painter's tape on the sides to make sure you get a clean edge, but I just used the paintbrush. So now we have our clothespins. I'm going to be taking my clothespins apart. So I am separating the wood pieces from the metal pieces, and I'm going to be painting the wooden pieces white. When you are picking your colors, you just want to make sure that you have some contrasting colors. You want to consider what's going to be in front, what's going to be behind, and how it's going to look all together. So once I have all those pieces ready, I am going to go ahead and let those dry, and while they dry, I'm going to paint my second coat of light gray onto my message board. Once I'm done with that and the clothespins have dried, I am going to start reattaching them to their metal fixtures. So I'm going to take one side with the metal spring. You can see those grooves on the inside. There is that second circular dip, that's where the spring will go. And then that indent on the top is where the pin will be inserted. So now I have the spring or the coil part on the underside of the pin piece, and I'm going to take the other pin, clothespin section, lay that on the coil, and try my best to lift the other side of the pin up and insert it. If you're a little unsure about this, just have another clothespin on hand that's not painted or used, and you can look at that. I did find it a little difficult, and you might find it difficult with your hands to pull that spring apart, so maybe practice it before starting. So once I have all my clothespins together, I'm going to decide where I want them. I used a ruler, and I'm going to break out this permanent glue. This glue is going to require you to wear gloves, and also you want to make sure you have a ventilated area. It is also a metal tube, so you don't want to squeeze it, because when you squeeze a metal tube, it will retain its shape. So glue will just keep coming out if you squeeze it. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of pressure, apply a thin line, and then place it where I need it to be. In the meantime, I'm just making sure to store the tube in an upright position and making sure I don't set it onto something that I don't want ruined. A good place might be the palette or just on a non-porous surface. So now that I have them in place, I'm going to have to wait 72 hours for the strongest hold to develop. And when it's done, I get to decorate. But before that, you might want to consider how you want to hang it. This is a sawtooth hanger that you can use the nails on the side to put onto the back. You just want to make sure your nails are short enough not to go through the entire piece. The other way that you could hang it is, instead of doing the sawtooth hanger, you could take twine or other durable rope, cut out a piece, decide where you want to put it on the back and how tall you want the string to be, and then use a staple gun to secure that into place. So again, the length of the twine in that case will be determined by how tall you want it to hang. So now I'm just putting some diagonal lines in the corner and a little line of silver on the clothespins. And once I have that done, it is ready to be used. So you could hang little drawings on it, or maybe some important information. And there you have it. And there we go, friends. Our message board is complete. I hope that you found this craft to be fun, and I hope it inspires you to make a piece for yourself. Also, you may have seen that little note that I put on there about the Summer Learning Challenge for 2021. More information about that is going to be coming out in the weeks to come, but pre-registration does start on May 17th, so check out the website, and I'll make sure to include information down in the description below. So until next time, friends, remember to stay cool, stay safe, and as always, stay creative, York County.